Hey guys, we're back, and today we're talking about a big announcement from Sony, the recent 200 to 600, which does fill that gaping hole in the Sony big zoom telephoto market. And that's fantastic news. It's exciting for a lot of people, but I want to have a closer look at this lens. We're going to break it down. We're going to basically go through the specs in detail. We're going to look at the price and what we think about the price of this thing. And we're going to compare it to the 100 to 400 G Master and see really if this thing makes any sense. Let's go. Well, they finally did it. Sony finally brought us a big, huge zoom telephoto, and here it is. And this isn't it. This is a Sigma that I've been using for the last few years with an adapter on my 7 III because we haven't had anything, and this is the best we got. But you know what? It served its purpose, but we have something new. We've got this 200 to 600 as well as the 600 f4 prime, which we're really not going to get into today. I wanted to talk about the 200 to 600 because I think for a lot of people, a lot of enthusiasts, it's within reach. It's not $13,000 American. It's within reach, but does it stack up? So we're going to look at the specs right now. We're going to dive in detail and see exactly what's going on with this thing. Let's have a look. So naturally, being a Sony shooter, I was really excited for an announcement regarding any kind of telephoto zoom. And to be honest, I really thought some of the third parties were going to beat them to the punch in some of the newer stuff. Maybe a native E-mount Sigma or Tamron. So it was great to hear that they were finally announcing something. So now that we know what we're looking at, I'm not totally convinced, and I'll tell you why. So firstly, looking at the focal length, 200 I'm not convinced is actually wide enough. And yeah, you're going to take the majority of your pictures at 600 and way up there to try and get close in all that detail. There are certain cases where you want to capture things that are decently close to you. And that's hard to do at 150, let alone 200. Especially with lenses pushing the limits like the Sigma 60 to 600, giving you that huge focal range. And I really wish they had brought out an E-mount in that lens. I think that would have been the #1 selling telephoto lens for Sony ever. And not to say that they can't in the future. So I am a little bit bummed about the focal length. And let me know if I'm crazy in the comments. What do you think? Next, let's chat about the aperture. Yeah, I'm all over the aperture. Of course I am. 5.6 to 6.3. This is not a fast lens. And when it comes to nature, it rarely cooperates. A lot of your shots are in crappy low light or last light, desperate situations where we need as much light as we possibly can. So needless to say, I really wish that this thing was a constant 5.6 or just a little bit better. And of course it's going to come at a price, but this is not a cheap lens either. Even watching some of the big names that got the opportunity to try some of these out before launch, you could see and hear their frustration at times regarding this aperture and in decent light. So touching on sharpness, it must be sharp, right? And it is. Sony's claiming superb image quality and high res throughout the whole zoom range, which is expected in something of this price point. But once again, with the tests so far, it seems to be a bit better than what we've been used to with our adapted lenses. But like my man Nick Page says, it's not the kind of sharpness that totally blows you away. And that's a bit disappointing for $2,000. Sony's also claiming that they work fantastically with the teleconverters that we already have in place with little to no loss of sharpness. But here's a few more examples, and I do look forward to some more real-world results. So how does the 200-600's autofocus system work? Well, really well apparently. And this is amazing because with the adapted lenses, autofocus is usually the first thing to suffer. And a lot of the test footage so far has been shot with the A9, and that's kind of silly to me because everything focuses amazingly with the A9. It's the A9. So I'd love to see more with the A7 III or equivalent cameras so we can really see what most of us are going to be kind of dealing with on a day-to-day basis with this thing. Mechanically, it uses Sony's direct drive SSM system or linear focus motor, which allows it to focus faster and more accurately than your standard focus system. This is the same system that's found in the 100-400 G Master. This will probably be the standout feature of this lens. Another impressive aspect of this lens is its build. And one of the first things that you'll notice is this is an internally focusing lens, meaning it won't extend as you zoom. This is an awesome feature for weather sealing, balance, and just convenience. And with a lot of these bigger telephotos, it can take quite a bit of effort to get you from one end of the zoom range to the other, but not with the 200-600. The zoom range is actually really short, letting you find your subject in the perfect frame quickly and easily. Overall, the build quality does look pretty good, but Sony says this lens is just moisture and dust resistant, which means they probably opted to not include a little rubber gasket once again. So, let's see how it stacks up against its older brother, the 100-400 G Master. The G Master is a tested and true incredible performer that's hard to beat in a lot of aspects. And being only 20% more money, I think this is going to be a tough choice for a lot of people. Let's have a look at some of the major differences. Of course, they're full frame E-mount lenses. The focal length is going to be a huge difference, and as we discussed earlier, the 1.4 and 2 times teleconverters are going to work great on both. Next, they're both using Sony's direct drive SSM or linear focus motors, which is fantastic, allowing them to keep up with cameras like the A9. When it comes to aperture, the 100-400 is definitely a faster lens, but not by a huge amount. Remember, when we're dealing with low light and faster shutter speeds, every little bit counts. Having more aperture blades, technically the 200-600 should have better bokeh, and in test shots I've seen it go both ways, so it's hard to say at this point. As far as minimum focus distance, the 100-400 is a clear winner, and the almost 8-foot minimum focus distance of the 200-600 is pretty typical. We've got a pretty big difference in filter diameter, and one extra stabilization mode on the 200-600. Here's where things get a little interesting. The 200-600 is a completely internally focusing lens, meaning it doesn't extend as you zoom, unlike the 100-400. So fully extended, the G Master is only about 1 5/8 inches shorter. And sure, it's easier to transport, but just something to think about. Where weight's concerned, the 200-600 is definitely heavier, weighing about 4.7 pounds, where the G Master weighs in just over 3 pounds. And finally, the price. Neither of these lenses are cheap, with the 200-600 coming in at $2,000 American dollars, where the G Master still sits at $2,500. So in the end, you're going to have to be the one to decide which one's best for you. Performance wise, I think maybe the newer 200-600 might have the edge when it comes to focusing speed, but as far as sharpness is concerned, the 100-400 looks like it's definitely going to be the winner. And as Chelsea so graciously reminded us, if you're looking for a big telephoto, this is pretty much our only choice. So maybe do a bit more research. What's more important to you, the reach, the focusing speed, or the sharpness? If we want to keep the sharpness of the 100-400 and throw a teleconverter on, we basically have the same lens. If you want to check out what's going on the moon, you can buy the 200-600 and throw a teleconverter on that. The beautiful part is we're getting some choices. So there's a comparison and some of my thoughts on these two lenses. And if you don't have a huge budget, of course, don't discount these big old 150-600 with an adapter. Sure, you're not going to have the world's fastest autofocus, but they're going to give you great shots. I've won tons of awards with this lens, and I don't regret it for 1 second. Am I going to buy one of these new ones that just came out? Maybe. I'm always looking, but I'm excited to see what maybe Tamron or Sigma answers with. It's just a matter of time before we start getting a bunch of bigger telephoto E-mount lenses. It's awesome. I love this stuff. If you like this video, if it helped you out in any way, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Drop your questions and comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. And let me know if I missed anything or what your thoughts are on either of these lenses. Like always, guys, make mistakes, be yourself, and get out there and take some more pictures. See you next time.